Based off the ever-evolving features and improvement in Unreal Engine, Epic Games Unreal Engine 5.1 is here, and this is good. With features most game engines and DCC tools can only dream of, Epic Games continues to push the boundaries of what a multidisciplinary tool like Unreal Engine can do. Over the years, the engine has pioneered a good number of technologies with every single release, and version 5.1 is no exception, as Unreal Engine now ships with more groundbreaking features. This release improves performance with a list of awesome new features across the board, alongside a list of updates which simply marinates the landmarking features introduced in Unreal Engine 5. Nanite has now been updated with a programmable rasterizer. This is to allow for material-driven animations and deformations via world position offset as well as an opacity mask. This exciting development paves the way for artists to use Nanite to program specific objects' behavior. For example, Nanite-based foliages with leaf blowing in the wind. And this begins to open more opportunities for creators to use Nanite however they choose. And starting with Unreal Engine 5.1, Nanite now requires the shader Model 6 to be enabled with DirectX 12, which automatically is now the default DirectX for Windows. At the same time, Nanite-enabled meshes can now support hidden shadow flags, and in terms of experimental features that is also available for Nanite, users can now convert landscape and get them rendered using Nanite. At the same time, users can also enable an initial support for native ray tracing and path tracing using a specific setting which is available within the release notes. The world partition now supports large world coordinates, enabling you to create massive open worlds without loss of precision. Meanwhile, users can now enjoy accelerated source control workflows with world partition, all thanks to an improved user experience around managing, filtering, searching, and viewing files and change lists. It is now easier than ever for users to find individual contents within a world. Additionally, there are some improvements to data layers, and these include the level instance support, data layer outliner, and the data layer functionality. The data layer functionality is now split into two, which now consists of the data layer asset for storing data layers and the data layer instance for referencing data layers assets that are real-world specific. And speaking about data and assets, the new HLOD, which is known as the hierarchy level of detail, now supports water rendering and streaming. This means that you can now create large water bodies with better performance and smaller memory footprints. Lumen now supports a two-sided foliage shading model. This happens by simply gathering lights from a back face and scattering it through the leaf, and this is attenuated by the material's subsurface color. Lumen currently now uses the spatiotemporal blue noise for cleaner image quality, especially when the camera is not moving. Lumen Reflections now support single-layer water with reflections forced on mirrors. There's also some improvement in the hardware ray tracing mode, the diffuse color boost, support for multi-viewports in end display, and much more. The Path Tracer and GPU Lightmass also have a good number of improvements coming to them, as the GPU Lightmass now supports sky atmosphere, stationary light skies, volumetric shadows for stationary objects, and a lot more others. There's also a new implementation to the translucent overlay material, as you can now assign static and skeletal meshes to secondary overlay materials, and this would come in handy for VFX artists, as there will be no need to set up multiple meshes and multiple rendering is no longer required. Interestingly, there is a shader on-demand compilation. This is a welcome development as it will cut down on excessive time users have to wait for an entire shader bunch to compile. Although if you're working with huge projects, this may not be so significant, but if you're working with simple day-to-day projects, then you definitely notice an improvement when compiling your shader next time in Unreal Engine 5.1. Introducing Unreal Engine 5.0 as experimental, the UV editor, which is currently in beta, is now available in Unreal Engine 5.1 as a built-in tool, which anyone can now access in several ways, contrary to having it as a plugin like many other tools that are currently in beta in Unreal Engine 5.1. The UV editor now supports UDIMs and currently ships with a couple of tools for layout, unwrapping, transforming, splitting, aligning, and auto UV, with an additional support for 3D viewport camera snapping to selection. This is definitely one of those tools that will make lots of people making 3D models in Unreal Engine feel comfortable. A pattern tool is also making a mark with this release, as users can now make tiles of a selected mesh, and for sure this can be arrayed along a given path or parameters can be used to generate interesting patterns. Overall, this is going to be very useful for those who like to make multiple copies of a particular mesh and probably want to make an array of these along a given path, or might want to use this to create some interesting designs. Animators now have an experimental machine learning based deformer framework that creates lightweight approximations of complex character rigs, removing the need to evaluate them at runtime. The machine learning deformer enables users to create high-fidelity approximation of complex proprietary rigs or an arbitrary deformation. The implementation uses a free Maya plugin to train the machine learning model, which in turn runs real-time in Unreal Engine. This is similar to Delta Mush from Autodesk Maya, which was released a few years back, and at the same time, this sort of looks like a combination of what you can actually do with some post tools that also exist in Maya. But either ways, for those who like to try out this plugin, there's going to be a link in the description for that. The Pose Search plugin now features a new motion matching animation blueprint node. This is a dynamic alternative to state machines which users can use to build character locomotion animation systems. The Pose Search plugin also comes packed with a custom integration of a rewind debugger, and users can actually use this to record and analyze the motion matching pose selection process to see which poses were selected and which poses were not and why they were not actually selected. Users can use this information to adjust and fine-tune the selection process to fit any project need. There's also the Deform Graph plugin feature, which allows users to create and edit Deformer graph assets to customize complex mesh vertex deformation behavior for any skinned mesh. Alongside this, there is the Physics Control component. This is a plugin which provides a means for you to add simple, intuitive, and yet powerful physically based control to a blueprint. With the Physics Control component, users can take advantage of the emergent physical motion of static and skeletal meshes while retaining artistic and gameplay control. The control rig continues to expand towards being a fully procedural rigging tool with many updates to the core framework. This now includes a new construction event that enables users to create rig hierarchies via a graph, and custom user events for creating and triggering rig events such as snap FK to IK and so on. And evidently, with updates like this, you can now automate rig creation for characters that may have different skeletal proportions and properties. Some other improvements to the rigging department include adjustable strides for IK rigs and retargeter, which can be used to adjust the strides of an overall stance of a retargeted character. There's the speed planting, which improves retargeting across unrelated models, as users can now reduce foot sliding and other similar problems. And similar to constraining methods in other animation tools, you can constrain entire transforms with a parent constraint or along individual channels with translation, rotation, lookat, or scale constraints, making it easier to attach objects to your rigs and also making it super easy for rigging artists and animators to control how object stays attached to their models. Unreal Engine 5.1 also shows up with some interesting physics and simulation improvements, with Chaos receiving a significant update which includes a new column mode for displaying contextual information based on state and size, removal, damage, and collision. There's also a new runtime damage watcher which has been included in the fracture mode that allows users to record viewport simulation at runtime. The Mesh Paint mode now supports geometry collections, and this allows users to paint vertex colors and textures on fractured geometries. In addition, vertex colors now propagate on new vertices generated by fractures, providing a more consistent behavior of materials when using them. It's also worth mentioning that Unreal Engine now makes it possible to use collisions from the original static mesh used in building a geometry collection. This provides fine customization of collision, especially when non-convex shapes are in use. These, alongside a few others like the new propagation system, the remover, convex, validate, auto cluster, and selection tools, are now all part of the fracture system that exists in Unreal Engine. Fluid simulation isn't left out at all. There is a new tricubic interpolation mode which can be used to add extra details without increasing the overall resolution of the simulation. There are also some very interesting features and improvements coming to cloth simulation for caching, pressures, and a new bucking feature to bend element constraints. There's also the new Neighbor Nearest Model plugin for creating in-game clothes with rich folds and wrinkles with relatively small runtime overhead and memory footprint. At the same time, there's also some more self-collision improvements and a lot more other improvements coming to cloth simulation in Unreal Engine. Niagara is having a bit of an improvement as ribbons are now supported on the GPU. Previously available only on CPU, now users can choose if they would like to do their rendering either on GPU or CPU. There's also some very interesting improvement that deals with the scalability mode, emitter versioning, and a few beta and experimental tools like the heterogeneous volumetric rendering, flipbook baker, fluid quality improvement, with a good number of UI and UX updates. And with most of the AI tools now moved from experimental, crowd simulators would find this set of tools pretty interesting. First off is the Mass Entity. This is a gameplay-focused framework for data-oriented calculation that enables you to efficiently populate large-scale worlds and create crowds with tens of thousands of believable AI agents. Next off is the Smart Objects. These are objects that are placed in levels that AI agents and players can interact with. These objects contains all the information needed for those interactions, and in this release, Smart Objects have received general stability and workflow improvement that makes it more convenient to set up for Smart Objects definition. And finally, the State Tree. The State Tree is a general-purpose hierarchy state machine that combines selectors from behavior trees with states and transitions from state machines, enabling you to create highly performant logic that stays flexible and organized. This release includes improved actors and blueprint-centric workflow, increased flexibility and modularity alongside memory optimizations. The audio section has also gotten a couple of enhancements within this release. Producing professional interactive sounds is now faster and easier, as sound designers can now focus more of their time on key areas that matters the most in a project. Meta Sounds updates now include additional node types, together with some various multi-channel output formats, and with a new ability to show feedback on real-time node connections. Soundscape is also another new addition available to audio engineers. This is a plugin that helps users generate procedural ambient sounds. And in general, if you're into meta sounds or you like tweaking sounds in Unreal Engine for your games or for your animation, right now you will be having some more useful enhancement and real-time feedback with amazing new set of plugins for Unreal Engine 5.1. And in terms of platform, there seems to be a couple of things to keep in mind. First off, Google Stadia is no longer going to be supported in upcoming versions of Unreal Engine. In Unreal Engine 5.1, this has been deprecated as support for Google Stadia platform is no longer there. And for those who work with Mac, it is also worth mentioning that you may have to build your own version of Unreal Engine 5.1 by simply using Xcode with your Mac devices. Previous versions of Unreal Engine supported building projects for Apple's ARM64 architecture, but its editor was not natively built for silicon devices, hence it actually had to rely on the Rosetta instruction translator to get things to work for Mac users. So if you're working with a Mac that has Apple Silicon built into it, you may have to build these things natively by simply using Xcode, where the target device will be listed as My Mac, and if you're using a Rosetta version of the device, then this will be listed as My Mac Rosetta. The folks at Epic Games have also removed the Windows Mixed Reality plugin, as this has been totally deprecated in place of the OpenXR for HoloLens. They've also deprecated the Oculus VR and Steam VR plugin in favor of the OpenXR plugin and the appropriate OpenXR runtime for Oculus and Steam VR. Epic Games have also released a list of supported operating systems for mobiles and also a number of SDKs for development and integration. There are also some improvements to Datasmith, as we now have a brand new 3D Studio Max plugin, and in terms of how you get to work with baked textures and resolution, baked textures from 3D Studio Max no longer automatically gets exported as 4K, as you can now easily cap the maximum resolution to values between 64 to 4K. Other tools that also have some interesting improvement include SolidWorks, SketchUp, and also USD files. There are lots of things coming to Visual Production, which deals with the new dedicated in-camera VFX editor tool, which is specifically tailored down for VFX artists with some enhancements to color correction windows. There's also the new Media Plate Actor. This particular one enables you to simply drag and drop footages from the content browser, while you can play back an uncompressed EXR both in the engine and also on your end display with appropriate SSD RAID. In terms of the DMX, there's also lots of updates coming to this, and lots of things that Unreal Engine just simply comes with that is too much to unpack in one video. So for those who like to take a look at this, there's going to be a link in the description that will take you right here, where you can see all of these things and read up on all of them. So this is more like it. Epic Games Unreal Engine 5.1 is here, and it ships with so many features that will be of help to both developers and artists alike. Tell me what you guys think about this one in the comment section, and of course if you like this video or you learned something from this, you can go ahead and give a like, and don't forget to share with a friend. And I see you guys in the next one. Peace.